Edition is well known for its not exactly stellar optimization. This issue requires many players to install mods that dramatically improve the FPS of the game, such as Optifine or Sodium. However, according to some, Optifine was very nearly implemented into the game over a decade ago, but due to Mojang's incompetence and greed, the effort failed, dooming vanilla Minecraft's performance forever.
Let's go dice.
Are these rumors true, or was there never even a chance at all? Let's dive straight into the history of Optifine to find out. Okay, so you're likely wondering, why does Java Edition run so bad in the first place? Well, there are a lot of reasons. Way more than I could quickly list. But ultimately, it comes down to neglect, bloat, and especially Notch, the original creator of the game. In late 2010, Minecraft entered its final stage of development, beta. Thousands of new players were joining every day, and the performance was absolutely terrible for the time. Notch was never the best programmer. He'd often make simple things far more complicated than they needed to be, while simultaneously being lazy in other regards. This led to the modding community stepping up and doing what they do best, Mojang's own job. On December 29th, a player known as Civilus released McRegion. It changed the way Minecraft stored chunks, allowing worlds to load up to 7 times faster. Notch was extremely impressed, and just a few months later it would officially replace the old world level format, and is still used today. Well, sorta, it's complicated but doesn't really matter. For his effort, Civilus would be credited alongside Paul Spooner
and good quality. How are you?
Third-party modders whose work would become part of Minecraft.
You seem very hyped.
There's also a few others, but that's for another video. Regardless, this was not the end of his story, and he'd soon begin working on improving the game even more, which leads us to Optimine. Not Optifine, Optimine. Got it? Good. In January, Civilus uploaded the Optimine mod to the MC forum. Instead of improving a single aspect like McRegion, it fixed various issues from rendering to explosions and reportedly saw a 20 FPS increase, which is pretty important when your game normally looks like a PowerPoint presentation. While Optimine was quickly rising in popularity, another up-and-coming mod developer, SP614X, had a very particular grievance.
I might play,
if you've ever
what's it
seen
called?
Really old Minecraft
I might have on
videos,
Roblox in a
you've
few
likely noticed
ice,
the intense
but
and heavy fog.
I also might not.
On
So
lower render distances, it can be
I'll like bet
suffocating,
on it.
and even directly led to this was really frustrating to SPX, as it caused the vibrant landscape to be washed out while actively hurting
I feel
the
that.
gameplay experience
That's
for
literally
lower
what I say
players.
whenever anyone asks me how's work
So
going.
in April,
I'll be
he
like, it's
released
going.
OptiFog, which gave you the ability to remove or change said fog. Alongside this, the programmer began adding new features including anti-aliasing, bug fixes, general FPS boost, and even a brightness slider. A lot of these things are now in vanilla, but it took years for Mojang to actually get around to it. As the months passed by, it became standard to install Optimine and OptiFog
You're
together,
in the Discord,
becoming
right?
some of, if not the most, downloaded mods created at the time. But there was an issue. Civilus was getting tired of continually patching Optimine. This was a period of Minecraft's history where it was getting major updates every few weeks, which meant modders had to constantly release new patches, leading to bugs, stress, and just plain boredom. For Civilus, this was too much, and in July he decided to retire from the project entirely and gave it to SPX. With the two mods finally managed by one person, they were stitched together and Optifine was officially born in early August for Beta 1.7.3. As a side note, I just realized the word Optifine is a combination of OptiFog and Optimine. That's some neat trivia, I guess.
Discord.
Anyways, the first version of Optifine included all of the features from the two separate mods. But it also had the iconic zoom feature, as well as strange things like the ability to change the time of day. I feel like I should say more about it, but y'all know what Optifine is, right? It's got buttons here and some sliders there. I'm sure you get the picture. Going forward, Mojang began working on the Adventure Update, which would dramatically change the game and be marketed as the official release of Minecraft. It was going to not only be massive, but even more difficult to run. With a looming deadline of November 18th rapidly approaching, there was perhaps no better time to properly adopt Optifine into the base game. So why wasn't it? Well, according to countless users on Reddit and, God forbid, the YouTube comment section, they did in fact try to. But in typical Mojang fashion, their incompetence and vanity caused the deal to fall through. However, others claim it never even happened at all, and that's why this video exists. I wanted to find the truth. Most of these rumors first began in 2012 and slowly spread throughout the community. Anyone asking why the mod wasn't in vanilla would usually get answers from people who had once heard something about it before, and the supposed reasons why the deal failed ranged anywhere from Mojang not wanting to pay to SPX demanding the entire mod be added, including features like Zoom that may have been seen as cheating. These claims were never backed up, but in 2019 the latter explanation was proven after an admin for the official Optifine Discord said this.
Why doesn't Mojang just adopt Optifine officially? The story is that Mojang offered to buy Optifine at one point, but they only wanted parts of the mod, which led to the deal going nowhere.
However, a few years later, things took a bit of a strange turn when the Mr. Epic made a video going over the history of Optifine, using the official answer to explain why the attempted buyout failed. Not long after this video was uploaded, the Q&A post was removed. Apparently the admin didn't actually have any proof, and SPX himself never publicly said that was the case. So does this mean that none of this ever happened and all of those rumors were false? Well, after a little digging, I managed to find statements regarding the offer made by both sides over a decade ago, and the true story is a lot more nuanced. I know that's a very scary thing to the Minecraft community, but don't worry, I'll make a video hating on Mojang eventually. On November 9th, 2011, a Twitter user directly asked Mojang if they had ever considered implementing Optifine. Jeb, the soon-to-be lead designer of the game, had this to say.
We asked him about it, but we couldn't agree on the compensation for it.
A few hours later, this tweet was shared on the Minecraft subreddit because, let's face it, everything on Twitter gets reposted to Reddit. And perhaps surprisingly, SPX responded.
The biggest problem was that merging some parts of Optifine in Minecraft is going to take time that I do not have. It has to compete with my work and my family, and this is where the compensation part comes in. It'll also split the Optifine development in two parts, one based on the official source code and one based on the MCP sources. This is more than I can handle currently. But not all is lost. I still hope that we can come to common ground and I can start developing Optifine with the official Minecraft source.
These are the only two sources I could find coming straight from the developers themselves. So here's what we know for sure. Sometime between late beta and the full release of Minecraft, Mojang attempted to implement Optifine. SPX was not necessarily opposed to adding only certain parts of the mod to the game. However, the level of work required to properly implement it would take far too long. Due to this, he likely believed he would need to be compensated for far more than whatever Mojang offered. And despite this, SPX still wanted Optifine to be vanilla eventually. In my opinion, that's the clearest the story is, and not much really needs to be speculated about. No need for conspiracies or Mojang being needlessly evil. It's just a failed deal, one of thousands in the gaming industry. But the fourth point does make me think. SPX did want Optifine to be added, and Mojang was still interested in working closely with third-party programmers.
Okay.
So, could it have ever been part of the game? The short answer is no. The long answer is no with 100 O's. Optifine will almost certainly never be part of vanilla due to three major reasons. The biggest issue with adding Optifine is adding Optifine. Not only would the mod need to be reprogrammed to work with the source code, but from what I have heard, its methods to make the game run better act like a band-aid to far larger issues, so it doesn't actually fix them. This can get easily broken as the game continues to be updated, or even cause Minecraft to be unplayable for a few players. Optifine might not work for 0.1% of people, but that doesn't matter because it's a mod. However, if it was sloppily implemented into the game, hundreds of thousands of people could suddenly be unable to play. The secondary issue is the compensation. Mojang's offer was probably somewhere in the range of $1,000 to $10,000. When you consider how much work SPX would have to do while maintaining his family and work life, the only deal that would have been suitable was either a six-figure lump sum or a job offer to work with Mojang. These have their own issues. A $100,000 buyout would likely be seen as far too much for what Optifine was really worth, while the latter would require SPX to quit his job he already had and move him and his family to another country entirely. Finally, as time passed on, Minecraft and Optifine would drift apart. Minecraft continued to become a larger and more complex game, with each new update making it increasingly sensitive to change. We'd see the final inclusion of a third-party mod in 2014, and ever since then, Mojang is focused on hiring the best programmers instead of trying to make quickly written, buggy mods work perfectly. For SPX, Optifine stayed extremely popular, and the flood of donations gave him a stable, long-term source of income, which is a lot better than a one-time payment of a few $1,000s. Alongside this, he'd also start adding more and more customizable features to the point Optifine effectively became its own client. While it was always a mod that prioritized player customization, I feel like for many years now it has become more important than the actual optimization. It's more like a total overhaul of the video settings menu, giving you the ability to change how the game looks or functions in pretty much any way you'd like. With newer and better performance mods coming out, I believe it will continue to embrace player freedom over just making the game run better. Optifine will never be a part of vanilla Minecraft. Though, it does make you wonder, what if Mojang has their eyes on something, or someone else? Hello everyone. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'd also like the secret developer who changed Minecraft forever. Please be sure to leave a like and comment if you have anything on your mind. It really does help.
What do you stream?
Finally, consider supporting me on Patreon. Anyways,
if you
I'll
don't
see
mind me
y'all
asking.
in the next video.
What it do? Bedtime crew. Hey man, listen, today I'm here with a tier list of the biggest curses in the UFC. Okay, you've probably seen the thumbnail, you see the title, you know what we're here to talk about.
This is not the video I clicked on. Damn, where's the video? What's Gorilla Tag?
I'm opening a restaurant.
I still love the name.
You don't remember the name.
Of course I remember the name.
You didn't even tell anybody
You
what the name
100%
was.
told me the name.
I bet you $1 million that you don't know the name.
Prepare to be out of $1 million, dude.
What the hell is this game? What the fuck?
This is the story of the rise and fall of Siggy Base, one of Tutti Tutti's most famous early group bases, frequently and incorrectly referred to as Ziggy Town. It is well known for being the home of the most well-known landmarks in all of Tutti Tutti history, the famous and also incorrectly identified Bedrock Comet. In the recent Reddit thread of XCC2, detailing his story about how the base came into being, as well as a trip of the origins of the famous Bedrock monuments and the base's final days. This base was founded
VR game? Oh, it's VR. I didn't even peep that part.
Original base, NFE, had recently been grieved, and one of his other group bases, Squid Base, had been abandoned. NFE would be grieved and rebuilt several times. After one of these events, two of the friends of NFE, Passio5 and Ziggy_S, decided to strike
It's
out
really
and find
popular.
new
Maybe I'll
base
try it
worlds
out.
together. Passy and Ziggy went to the Nether and traveled to -400, 800, the same as the overworld coordinates of
Actually, I don't have a VR.
found an existing portal. When
It's
they
so never
emerged,
mind.
the land
There's
around
no
was
point.
untouched at the time and was a reasonable
I
distance from
might have to
spawn,
get one of those
safe
one
for some
day.
time being. Ziggy started building a farm, and Passy began building a replica of a large castle, which was apparently featured in an early Minecraft tutorial. XCC2 arrived soon after and decided to build an oriental building connected to Ziggy's farm. Soon after, others who were friends of NFE were invited to come build there as well. These people were JDW9966, Exop, ZXCWBZ1, Redo Lunatic, also known as Spicane, and Police Mike 55. Redo Lunatic, also known as Spicane, built underground sheep farms with individual pens for each color of sheep. This was fairly revolutionary at the time, and was considered to be a luxury at a base. He would use this farm to create the green/purple wool, in quotes, daily dose.
Yeah, it seems
sitting on
pretty
the
cool.
hillside. He also farmed the red wool that XCC2
I tried
used
it like
to
one
build
time, like I was
his
playing a
favorite
racing
original
game,
designs on Tutti Tutti.
like
The
a long
Dormition
time ago when it was like still pretty new.
which was later
That was
destroyed
like
by
so
lava.
long.
Exop designed a
It wasn't even mine,
multi-level
it was like my
auto
uncle's or
farm
something
and
like
a
that.
lava-based incinerator with of a redstone door. JDW made
Boom.
a nice stone
Might have to
tower.
purchase one, but I
Cassie
don't play.
built a squeeze
I'm not
door.
interested in too many
Ziggy also
VR
attempted a
games,
very
so
large dark
I don't know.
platform grinder made of netherrack. Police Mike 55 made a small house, and soon after, an ejaculating golden phallus. XCC2 built a small factory over the top of Passy Snow Farm, which was reminiscent of a larger factory building he had created on Squid Base. Pop-Bob also arrived. He mostly idled at Ziggy Base, and didn't build anything of note, though he did create some drama when a new player came to 2B2T. Brett Nillen was new to the server, and XCC2 invited him to Ziggy Base. He constructed some very nice underground farms, but somehow managed to get into some verbal conflict with Pop-Bob.
Hey, thank you,
Pop-Bob
dog.
immediately TNT Brand's farm.
But alright, besides Gorilla Tag, what else do you
It
play?
was around this time that something amazing happened. Someone discovered a method by which you could use FreeCam, which was a new feature in some clients at the time, to open a chest and remove blocks and then have someone break the chest. When the chest broke,
Hey, thank you, big dog.
would also fall out of the broken chest. This made the removed blocks have a value of -1 and could be used to click into
There
a
are shooter
chest
VR
and
games,
fill it.
so you mainly
What
play
people realized
VR,
at
I
the time
assume.
was that these blocks could also be held and placed an infinite number of times.
Beat Saber,
Also,
I've
the
seen that.
infinite blocks could be stored in chests. They use auto-click programs to click fill
Oh, I
chests.
never got
This
into
provided them with
that.
unlimited materials. When this
Well,
was
I don't have
discovered,
VR, but like I've seen people play. I don't know. I'm not too into it.
Which was left over from the Pop-Bob backdoor plugin exploits of Plugin Town. Passio 5 and XCC2 ran across the nether roof using speed potions and arrived at Cream Stash. They brought back spawn eggs,
Like, to be honest, all I'd just be playing right now is like Minecraft and Roblox right now. I'm looking into FIFA when it comes out. I think it came out today, actually.
Famous monument known all over 2B2T. Passy worked with Imperator Terai, known for Viking Base, or Imps, to voxelize a marker from the game Dead Space. Imp had voxelized the famous Christ the Redeemer statue, which he built at Viking Base, making it one of the most iconic structures in 2B2T history. With his help, Passy's Dead Space marker idea was made real and constructed with only a few mistakes with the bedrock placement. They would also use some of that bedrock to build a nearby vault, only accessible with FreeCam, featured in one of FinMC's videos, as well as a nearby bedrock wall, blocking off some of the ocean near the shoreline. Exop and Passy had some idea to build something there, but it never materialized. At one point, Exop built a tall jungle tree and promptly climbed it and fell to his death in front of them, returning to spawn. He begged them to chest his gear, which they did. One time when he was AFK, Pop-Up decided to trap him in an iron drowning cage. You can see an early version of Pop-Up's NHack.
But yeah, those are like the only two games I'm playing right now. I do want to play. I should finish playing Grizz. I keep telling myself I won't finish that game, but I haven't finished it.
XCC2, Spicane, Exop, ZXCWBZ1, Pop-Up, and Brand would meet up with Amalimix and Cameron to go make a new base in the jungle, which would become XCC2's Jungle
What
Saucer Research
games?
Station and the surrounding builds, but that's a story for another day. Ziggy Base would
I
be
think I'll keep the
resurrected in early
terracotta. No,
2014.
is this terracotta? Yeah,
XCC2
terracotta.
traveled back there
I think I'll
after
just keep
reading
that for
other
design.
bases, only to find it in decent condition. He rebuilt Exop's ruined auto wheat farm into a stone-breaking green glass tower. He also constructed a dam and river to cover up extensive TNT damage to the nearby desert terrain. They also had a new player who joined 2B2T who came to help, Dark Joe, also known as Joe2013. One thing that XCC2 couldn't fix was their double spawner skeleton/zombie grinder, which had been wrecked in the previous briefing. He had contacted Housemaster on Steam and gave him 2 server commands to replace the spawner in the same exact position. He came to the base and looked at what XCC2 wanted and was just about to do this for him, but then decided at the last minute that he wouldn't issue the commands. Housemaster was afraid that XCC2 would tell people what he had done, and they would ask him for similar favors. No amount of pleading would convince him. After several months, Ziggy Base was again found and griefed. XCC2 abandoned it for a final time and laid it into ruins until its final demise around the time of the Russia invasion. During the chaos of that time, he traveled there only to find Taylor and Jared, in quotes, protecting the base by covering it in a giant lava cast. This was to no avail, however, as industrious griefers had found ways to remove the bedrock. Over time, even this piece of indestructible history has been nearly wiped from 2B2T. XCC2 had been back to visit a few times since then, but for him, it's a depressing scene.
Oh, so I don't get pissed at him. That's mad whack.
Time at the base was one of the best times he can recall having on the server. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank XCC2 for the information for this video. His thread about the history of the Ziggy base will be in the description, and I highly encourage you to read it. Leave a like, and maybe even consider subscribing for more information.
Just let them
like
know
this.
that the server's up.
Anyway guys, stay fast, and see you guys next time.
It's in this one. Wait, you know Ken? Alright, let me... Because I peeped that you pinged them.
It's made very, very cool through the media.
So I was like, wait, what the heck?
Valkyria is a very old base and group on 2B2T. It was created in 2013 and founded by Sato86. Today in this video, I'll be telling you the history of Valkyria from the perspective of Sato86. Valkyria began from a temporary map event on April 27th, 2013. The owner of 2B2T, Housemaster, brought the main 2B2T map down to test some plugins. For Sato, the whole event felt like an out-of-season April Fool's event. In fact, the last April Fool's event had only happened 26 days before this. This allowed Sato86, Pyrobytes, and Drew Bookman to meet with the crew from Hitler Wood, along with other names like Snacky North. Housemaster actually came to their place in the temporary map and spawned an army of zombies to try to kill the group. They eventually moved somewhere else to escape his pranks, and then the temporary map ended. Once Housemaster brought back the main map, Sato had an idea of asking the players involved on the temporary map if they wanted to reunite again. The players found the idea cool, but no one was willing to risk their
I'll play that
base
soon.
for that to happen. So Sato
Yeah,
took
ask my
on the
boy if he
task
wants to
of
hop on
choosing
that.
a location for all of them
Because
to
we have
meet.
like a world that we
Using
were
a
playing.
2B2T seed, Sato picked a location in a single-player world, which was a mountain
It is
biome
pretty fun,
with a
but
sea
I never
nearby.
got too deep into it.
However, when Sato was heading towards the coordinates, he noticed that there was a massive base nearby just 2,000 blocks away from the coordinates he picked. Thankfully, all the base members had
But
been
it is pretty
long
fun, I
gone,
can't lie.
since Sato and the group would later find out that the members of that base left a few weeks prior to Sato finding it. The members wrote their perspective on a blog post in James Russell's blog called The Spirit of Valkyria. Back then, most players were poor, so the group used simple materials to build a place. Sato focused on making walls because he always found them a cool thing to build. He would also build the majority of structures at the base. He made a great storage house where they organized the materials after their last storage got burned. They kept building structures like Zerm Zero's tower near the sea. However, for a long time, they didn't have a name for the base. A player named Hinder
Definitely
JD
ain't close.
initially named it the Greater Facepunch Reich, following the trend of Nazi names like Hitler would, but Sato later suggested to name it Valkyria, and the name stuck because it was easier to just say Valk. Eventually, on May 8th, 2013, this is how the base looked like. In the distance, you can see Drew's 3-layered farm. A player named Infiltrator was still working on his wool hut. You can see it on the far left. Zach3397 was frustrated that his building didn't look good, so Sato volunteered to build him a better place. This is what Sato managed to come up with. Zach liked it and settled there. Sato also made a bridge connecting his place across the river. The group was also lucky with spawners, since just a bit off the ocean, there was a double spawner. He and Kinorana would spend a lot of time there, making new gear
Bro, I looked
or
away and I
repairing
didn't even
existing
realize I
ones.
placed that in the wrong
Everything was
place.
normal until
Almost like
Kinorana
walked
brought
off.
a dupe to the group. This dupe made the group from poor to rich very quickly. Also around
Let me
this
have
time,
this here
Sato
just
would
in
create
case.
the infamous eagle symbol. After watching a lot of building videos, he stumbled upon one video from the building group called the Syndicate Project. This group of builders could build giant cities in record time. This particular video was the first one Sato saw from them, and he was so amazed that he even downloaded the map file so he could explore the great city of Aquila. Aquila means eagle in Spanish, and in the video, you will notice the symbol we all know today, popping up many times. So he began experimenting with the eagle around Valkyria, building it around the walls and at the dock. The base kept thriving, but not for long. For unknown reasons, Drew Bookman became upset. Structures would begin to burn down, and funny enough, Drew was the only witness to any of those incidents. Drew would blame it on Thunder almost every time, but there was one problem with that argument. It's usually raining while Thunder happens on 2B2T. and if something were to be struck by lightning, then the rain would get rid of it almost instantly. So the base members didn't buy that excuse, but they didn't make a big deal out of it, since it wasn't a major loss to the entirety of Valkyria. There were also other incidents, like Drew taking armor from Kino Rena's dupe stash and burning more houses. This eventually made Drew leave Valkyria, since no one believed him. He went to go build his own
Bro,
base.
how far does this
Sado
go?
would still talk
God
to him
damn.
through whispers and chats. About a few weeks later,
I don't know if I'll be able to get like
Valkyria
ice all
was
the way
briefed.
here.
At this point, many group members would guess on who did it. Drew Bookman. At that time, Sado couldn't help defend Valkyria since he was at Anatolia. Sado left Anatolia to pick up the pieces at Valkyria and help the others regroup. After this, the second incursion happens. Valkyria had so many players that not everyone was aware it was griefed yet. Some players would log into a griefed base, so Hinder JD left a sign there to inform players on what went down. The second
Let's see
incursion
how far
allowed
this
Sado
goes.
to meet a lot of players that he had never interacted with before,
Oh, it's not that far.
like Jack the Ripper and XCC2. And since Drew had quit the server for months without leaking the coordinates of Valkyria, Sado decided to invite everyone he met at spawn to rebuild the base. This would become known as Valkyria 2.0. The base overall became prettier and better than what it used to be. The group invited players like the Judge Holden and Cytotoxic T Cell. Jack made his famous Atali. One day, the Pompano opened a tunnel in the middle of Valkyria that was connecting his secret underground cow farm, and he dumped about 30 to 40 cows in the middle of the base through that tunnel. Pompano would claim that they were invading the base. However, Drew came back to play again, and he eventually found out that the group were all at Valkyria. Sado eventually called him the Valkyria Council, and that was basically the moment he knew that the base was doomed. Sado knew that the base would either be destroyed or leaked to the public. Drew eventually leaked the coordinates to Pop-Up, and he showed up at the base. When that happened, Sado told everyone to leave the base. Pop-Up wasn't aggressive, but the group knew it was all over. To this day, no one knows who grieved Valkyria the second time. Some players say it was Pop-Up, some say it was Drew, and some say it was Cold Wave to prevent bigger damage to the base. But for Sado, it honestly doesn't matter anymore. Valkyria was a learning experience for Sado. He never had to manage so many players before, and he tried to be as diplomatic as possible. If there's a lesson that the base taught Sado,
Dang.
it's that no matter how many precautions you take and how well you manage things, you will never be in control. Control over anything on 2B2T is an illusion, and Valkyria taught him to embrace that. He knew the risk of rebuilding the base and accepted them by the time they were at the second incursion. And for Sado, it was honestly very worth it.
Bro,
The base held literally 25% of the
Ryan
online
Garcia's
players at
fight
the time.
announcing his fight
So,
next
at
week.
most
That's
times,
lit.
5 of the group members were online building and playing there. It's one of the
Can't
reasons why
wait.
Sado thinks Pop-Up didn't go aggressive when he arrived, because he knew that he would be killed if he were to engage in combat. The group didn't end with Valkyria, but continued on to different bases, changing shapes and players, but still keeping the use of the Eagle till this day. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank Sado86 for the information for this video. Leave a like, and maybe consider subscribing
These videos
for
are
more
lit.
information.
Camtown.
The NFL season is here.
They are showing out with the pregame fits.
Show me where to get that.
Camtown is a very old base on 2B2T. It was created in 2012 by Cameron, Amalimix, Spit Kane, and XCC2. What's unique about this base is the variety of players who base there. From medieval castles to illegal items and backdoors, I'll be telling you the history of Camtown from the perspective of XCC2. The story begins after Ziggy Base was griefed. The players Spit Kane and Amalimix left to go find chunks in a jungle biome, which was new at the time. After finding some jungle chunks, it was decided to build what would become known as the Jungle Saucer Base. Spit Kane immediately created a tower of chests and water. Amalimix started building a brick house, and they invited other players to the base. Cameron built his house, and Leon Noria started his only build on 2B2T, which he called his Sand Nig Palace. However, he never finished it due to running out of gold. Leon disappeared from the server during this time, and was never seen again.
No one
Brand
else.
Nillen came and created a small hut and tamed some ocelots. There was a tower lighthouse near Spit Kane's chest and water build, created by ZXCWBZ1. When XCC2 arrived, He thought about creating a giant jungle saucer. While it was being made, the group dug out the underground for materials and to build a base underneath during construction. Pop-Up also arrived, and
Of
he
course this
created a
motherfucker
connecting
looked in
tunnel
my
in the
eyes.
underground section and dug out a giant pit and staircase to bedrock. X-Zero XP also arrived and made another tunnel with a piston door leading to a strange room with a sculpture decorated with lava. A long tunnel was created leading to another base nearby with villagers and a large sugarcane farm, which was also made by X-Zero XP. Spitcane created a villager breeder, and they eventually had tons of villagers. XCC2 finished the tunnel near the jungle saucer with stone brick and extended it under Leon's palace to some nearby land where XCC2 was going to build a castle, but it was never started. Eventually, the base was abandoned, and Amalimix, X-Zero XP, and XCC2 built the nearby new NFE. A year or more later, XCC2 came back and restored the saucer and completed Leon's castle. Once the group left the jungle saucer base, Cameron, Amalimix, and Spitcane headed far out and founded
I knew he
Camtown,
didn't die.
a much bigger and interesting base. When they settled at the site of Camtown, XCC2 was given the coordinates and made the journey a few days later. It was a pretty far walk at the time, and Spitcane had used a mist, which is a tool to display an overview of a Minecraft world to locate the chunks for Camtown. He shared a map from a mist with XCC2, which was relatively new at the time. The map had the location of the base, and some sites indicated for a nearby gold farm that Spitcane was building. Spitcane also dug a small hole under a mountain and made a pumpkin farm, a sand duper, which was a long-standing dupe that let a player use a piston method to dupe sand and gravel, and eventually dragon eggs. There was nothing else built when XCC2 arrived, and he made a mountaintop temple structure as emeralds were new, so he wanted to use emerald ore in a build. Though it was small, it turned out nice and fit well on the mountain. The next thing XCC2 started right away was his castle. He wanted to try a new style of building, mixing smooth stone with stone brick. He picked a real castle in Ireland called Bunratty Castle to model it off of. It took a few weeks to get it built, and for XCC2, it's his favorite build he ever created on 2B2T. It was finished at the end of September of 2012. Around this time, Amalimix and Cameron started building more structures around the base, and a player named Tonad arrived. Amalimix created a stone brick tower and a wood mansion with a lot of wool inside. Cameron made a sandstone tower and a small brick house. Tonad started building his small house with an unfinished tower and a fountain in front. The progress here was slow, and other players were added over the next month or two. Stormtrooper arrived, as well as Tristan and his in-real-life friend, Amigo. They started building two large builds that were never finished. The group worked on building roads around the base during this time. It was around this time period that Spitcane vanished. He started playing less and less, and his involvement at Camtown was rare. He had helped design some interesting wall decorations for the underground steps beneath the castle, and then went off to create the 2B2B newspaper, and then faded away. The base was idle for a long time, and was eventually found and griefed. XCC2's castle was covered in a small lava cast, and there was obsidian everywhere around Camtown. They burned Amalimix wood and wool building, and damaged a few other structures. However, this is just the beginning of Camtown's history. Around 2013, there were lots of other events going on around the server. Amalimix and XCC2 started 700 base in February of 2013, and XCC2 was also at Imperator's base, building there as well. Also around this time, XCC2 and others got access to Tristan's Anvil backdoor that let them create infinite blocks. They used those to create stashes at ImpSpace. XCC2 went back out to Camtown and decided to repair it. The group at Camtown knew the player who had griefed it, and he rarely played on the server anymore. When XCC2 came back to Camtown, he did it alone. Once it was done, he started telling some players, and they came out to build. These players were Passio05, X-Zero XP, Police My 55, Amalimix, Cameron, and Pop-Bob. Taylor112, Stormtrooper, Slow_Dive, and Herc came later on. Amalimix, Taylor112, and Police Mike 55 built a dock area with a boat. The group was working on an underground rail system, and there was a new dupe involving FreeCam. A player could open a chest in a minecart in FreeCam and then push a button. The minecarts would roll out of range, and then you could empty the chest with the FreeCam window. Then you could go down the rail line to the minecarts, and it would still be filled with the original items. The group duped some items, but the dupe was patched shortly after. However, there was another dupe that came soon after. It was basically the same dupe, except the player had to send the minecarts into the nether. When you went to the nether, the cart was still filled with the items. The group used this and duped a ton of items and had a large chest room in the castle. Several newer builds showed up around this time. Cameron made a replica of a sand temple and a library filled with music discs. Amalimix and Cameron also created a brick-sized
Oh, this is fire.
next to XCC2's giant sandstone temple. Someone started creating a giant statue next to the statue of Amalimix, but it was never finished. Behind this, Taylor112 started building a large church, which was also never
bro.
finished.
I really
Stormtrooper built a little house
push
village area
on, bro.
in the
This is
jungle. Around
fire.
this time, the group learned
Chill,
that the
now I
owner
want
of
it.
2B2T, Housemaster, was going to run a plugin to remove illegals. XCC2 decided to preserve them in item frames. It filled them with spawners, spawn eggs, and fire animations in the halls under the castle. For some years, it was still possible to find spawners and item frames around the base in various tunnels. The base was flourishing, however, there was of course drama. It was impossible for players like Police Mike 55, Taylor112, X0XP, and PopUp to get along indefinitely. In one notorious incident, X0XP made XCC2 angry by burning down the entire jungle near the base. At the time the group was rebuilding and expanding Camtown, they were all using PopUp's NHack client. It had all the typical features of a hack client at the time, including ROT13 chats, which was used as encryption in the main chat, so that nobody knew what they were saying. PopUp was adding features and sending out new versions every few days. Around this time is where the unfortunate events occurred. After PopUp sent out a new update to his NHack client, he shortly afterwards sent Cameron and Amalimix links to a screenshot of their own computer desktops. PopUp had included an option in his NHack client to snapshot someone's own desktop and upload the file to him. After this, Amalimix and Cameron lost their minds and quit 2B2T forever. XCC2 stayed at the base, as well as a few others. However, it was just XCC2 and Stormtrooper for a while. One day, a player named Java Zun griefed Camtown. XCC2 and Stormtrooper fought him off, and XCC2 killed him in the nether, but they knew he would come back to finish the grief, so it was left abandoned again. At one point when XCC2 was at ImSpace, and iTristan got backdoor access, he placed a spawn-in end portal block at Camtown. XCC2 and others used it for a while before it was learned about and removed. Around that same period of time, Stupid Walrus came out and did a bunch of restoring near Taylor112's church by adding all kinds of spawners and random blocks. When Camtown was finally abandoned, most of the duped items were moved a few thousand blocks away in the nether to a new build site. PopUp, Police Mike 55, and a few others went there and started a village, but it was never finished. Stormtrooper also moved about 100,000 blocks away and took a lot of duped items and created a small base for himself in the flower biome, which was new at the time. Today, Camtown is blown up. Most of the structures are surrounded by lava casts, but the history of the base will go on to be remembered till this day. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank XCC2 and iTristan for the information in this video. Leave a like, and maybe consider subscribing for more information like this in the future. Anyway guys, stay fast, and see you guys next time.
Let's see. I like this guy's videos. Hold up. He's got a whole playlist.
Or in layman's terms, a really big hole was first created around February of 2014. The creators
This guy's still
Victor98 and Saito began digging a hole to bedrock. Some players that helped them were Lemonfoot, Mars Argo, James Russells, Little Chuckster, FTSQR, and 2B2T. They decided to name this cape Cytoscape and started to dig the hole with some chests as storage. As more players joined, a 3-story castle-themed fort was built around X1000, Y-1000 that held the players and their items. The cape had a lot of supplies that included crop and animal farms. They also created a skywalk in the middle called the Virtual Plaza and used it to look down on the progress of the Gape. Everything seemed to be going fine, but in true 2B2T fashion, a mix of betrayal, attacks, and lava casts ended the project quickly. The Gape lay dormant for many months. One day, James Russells was at a base called the 700 base and decided to explore. Upon approach to the Gape, a player's name appeared on his radar. He approached with caution, as his current base was mere seconds away. Here he met the self-named player 2B2T, who explained to James that he had been working on restoring the base. Before long, there were around 14 players at the Gape. The players were Coconut 4, James Russells, Victor 96, 2B2T, Louisi, Ian 5281, Khaleesi, Lil Chuckster, Alan Nistam, Lemonfoot, Cupcakeist, Arizona Admin, Wormfood 5281, NF2SQR. Everything went smoothly until the server started to rubber band badly. Almost every 10 seconds, you would be thrown back 20 blocks if you were moving. This went on for days, and the team thought they possibly were the ones who created this lag. A month passes, and Housemaster, who is one of the owners of 2B2T, still couldn't fix this lag. Because of this, the Gape project collapses, and players started to leave. Housemaster eventually gets the server to work again, but the damage was done. The base ended up being lava casted, filling most of the hole with cobble. This did not stop them though, as they picked up their belongings and moved on, far from spawn. This is where they set out to create a bigger and better Gape, the sequel that is known as Gape 2.0. The Gape 2.0, also known as Khaleesi's Gape, began after Gape 1.0 was lava casted. New terrain was scoped out, far away from spawn. This Gape was marked out around 128 by 128 meters, which later was extended to 254 by 254 meters. It was estimated that they had around 1,400,000 blocks to dig out. With a lot of time and effort, they managed to dig out most of the blocks. After a couple of months, Gape 2.0 turned into a sufficient base, with a pig farm, rail duplicator, villager farms, and horse breeding center all created. They also had a living space called the Bunker that would have an automated item sorter, storage room, mining area, and brewing room. They also started to work on a temple called the Temple of Light, but it never got finished. The base had almost everything, which made the players get bored. As time went by, the interest in staying at the Gape started to decline. An invite came to some of the players at Gape 2.0 about a new upcoming base featuring many old well-known players. This new base was called the Fenrir. This base had a total of 36 players and was comprised of many well-known names such as Victor 96, Louisi, Scaviar, Pyrobyte, Coldwave, Khaleesi, Kino, and the founder, Sato 86. This led to the Gape 2.0 to be left unsupervised, leading to the destruction of the Gape 2.0, but the memories of both of the Gapes will always be remembered. Thank you guys for watching. I would like to thank Sato 86, XCC2, and James Russells for their information to make this video possible. I will leave a link to their channels in the description. Leave a like on the video, and maybe consider subscribing for more videos like this in the future. Anyway guys, stay fast, and see you guys next time. Fenrir was founded on September 23rd of 2014, but would only become active in October. Fenrir was the base Sato 86 decided to make after he came back to 2B2T after a short break. It was built on a mountain biome near an ocean. At first, it was just Sato and Pyrobyte, but Sato started to invite more players to it. Suddenly, the server became unplayable due to a lag issue, and all of the player base of 2B2T went to play on a server called 3B3T. 3B3T was hosted by Pyrobyte, and they played there for a couple of weeks until Housemaster fixed the issues on 2B2T. Meanwhile, Sato met a lot of players on 3B3T. He made friends and decided to carry on these friendships back on 2B2T. He then invited them to Fenrir. These players were James Russells, Khaleesi, Victor 96, Coconut 4, Scaviar, Coldwave, Pyrobyte, Kinorana, and basically the entire group of Gape 2.0. At 3B3T, they made a base called Nova. Nova would become a preparation for Fenrir. Sato used it to evaluate whether those new players could be trusted. The Nova base went on without much issue, so Sato invited them to Fenrir. At this point, Fenrir was just starting. There was barely any loot there, so they really weren't risking much. Sato built a castle, and it was connected to the other side of the base. The other players built the rest. Sato let people build whatever they wanted without having to fit a theme or grid. Pyrobyte built a lighthouse. Khaleesi built a structure for the member board. The base had a replica of the spawn beacon from the second incursion. It was designed to make it hard to steal the beacon, with multiple lava chambers that would burn the item if it was ever tried to be stolen. They also had a gold farm that was used for AFK experience farming, a glass dome in the water that surrounded a small build, a subway system that could transport you around the base, item storages, the Fenrir Inn, and so much more. Coconut 4 built a replica of the Eiffel Tower, and it was made of brown wool, but was eventually destroyed when lightning ignited it. The base went on so well that they eventually got bored and went on to a new project. This project was a base built on a mountain savanna that would later be known as Asgard 2. Fenrir was supposedly destroyed by Pop-Bob, but it's not certain. The destruction of Fenrir will always be a mystery, but the memories of Fenrir will always be remembered as a time of peace and unification on 2B2T. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank Sato86 for the information for this video. Leave a like, and maybe consider subscribing for more videos like this in the future. Anyway guys, stay fast, and see you guys next time. This is the story of the rise and fall of Siggy Base, one of 2B2T's most famous early group bases, frequently and incorrectly referred to.
Gran Turismo has audiences revved up.
This is your
The Fellowship of the Diamond has a long history on the server. This group has been playing since 2011 and has been mostly forgotten to time. At the same time they were playing, another group began playing and called themselves the Brotherhood of the Diamond and made themselves well known for helping people at spawn. Their name got spread around the server, while the Fellowship of the Diamonds didn't, since they usually kept to themselves. In this video, I'll be telling you the story of the Fellowship of the Diamond from the eyes of Killer Capybara, who's one of the members in the group. The story begins in August 2011. Killer Capybara and his friends had been playing Minecraft together for a while, experimenting with build challenges, adventure maps, and survival maps. While they had been enjoying the game, they were looking for something more to challenge them and play with other people. One of his friends, Zode, had been browsing 4chan when he saw a post about 2b2c.net, a vanilla anarchy Minecraft server with no rules, mods, or admins. It looked perfect, a server that was challenging, but still the same vanilla Minecraft experience. Zode had warned them that the first thing they would see when they logged on would show them exactly what they were getting into. Killer Capybara was the first to log on with Zode, and the first thing they saw was a giant flaming netherrack swastika above their heads, and two guys in diamond armor flying above them, engaged in PvP combats. That was when they knew that they had found their server. The players consisted of Zode, Serpent King 12, _Iron Eagle _, and Killer Capybara. Together, they went to survive and thrive in the most hostile server out there. The first base they set up was not too impressive and extremely close to spawn. It was called 700 base, as it was only 700 blocks away from spawn. This began their naming scheme for all of the bases to come. It unsurprisingly did not last very long, and the group found themselves moving even further away. Their next base was 3000 base. It lasted through September and part of October. The base was only discovered once by another person with the lack of knowledge to move further away from spawn, so they moved in only a couple hundred blocks away. The group packed up their limited supplies and decided to move even further away to a place where they felt safe. Tugboat Base is the third base that they made on the server. It was established in October 2011, shortly after their 3000 base was destroyed. They always called it the 8000 base because it was that many blocks away from spawn. It started out as an underground base with a small tree farm as the central hub, and a number of offshoot rooms including essentials like a farm, animal area, chest room, and mine, as well as some niche ones like a Church of Sheep Ra, a sheep that one of Killer Capybara's friends said was responsible for somehow crashing the server, though it cannot be confirmed if that ever actually happened. A snowball fight arena filled with snow golems, party room, a history hall, and a room filled with signs they posted documenting the origins of the Fellowship of the Diamond. For the first iteration of the base, up until its grief in late January 2012, everything remained underground, but eventually, they constructed a cobblestone castle outside of the base. This was the only structure that would be above ground at the base for 4 years. They based together for a while, and eventually, a bit of bickering began to bubble up in the group. After an argument between group members over ownership of diamonds, They came to a consensus that they had to change some things to keep from falling apart. It was at this point they came up with the name for the group, the Fellowship of the Diamond. The group name was an unoriginal play on the Fellowship of the Ring from Lord of the Rings. Diamonds were more applicable to Minecraft than rings, and were the instigator for the naming, so they rolled with it. After the 8,000 base, a multitude of other bases were created by the Fellowship. A small town called Diamond Town was created in November 2011, with a population of about 8 players. The group also created a sky base, which they named Laputa, after a flying island in the Gulliver's Travels. All of those bases were griefed shortly after the creation in January 2012. The 8,000 base was finally griefed as well. They moved away to their last base, created in September 2012. This base was named Mushroom Home, and it was built in a mushroom biome. There was one house, a dock for fishing, farms, and an enchanting room. However, at this point, most of the original members had gotten bored and stopped playing, and the only players that were left were Zoe and Killer Capybara. In March 2015, Killer Capybara discovered James Russell's 2B2T blog and began reading all about the things that he missed out on during his absence. Seeing the server thriving with all of these amazing bases and history inspired him to log in and play again. He managed to convince Zoe to play again and brought their new friends, Hyrex King, Pancake1, and Killer Commando 29 to help restore the old 8,000 base. Hyrex King was very productive and created many of the more prominent builds at the base, such as the Pagoda and the Stoneberg Castle. The infamous tugboat was built in July 2015 after Hyrex King told Killer Capybara he needed to build something since he spent most of the days mining for resources. And after Killer Capybara looked up some boat designs on Google Images, he found a picture of Timothy Tugboats and thought it was hilarious. During this time, someone came and took a world demo of the base, and it ended up on Project Vault. Then sometime in 2015, the base got griefed once again, and that was it. It got progressively more and more griefed due to being so close to spawn, and most of the members quit soon after. Killer Capybara moved out and started building a new base in March 2016. The group does not still play on 2B2T. The last time they were all online was in 2016 at their final group base, but since then, it's only been Killer Capybara. He ended up getting invited to the Bodecking in 2017 and played there until it was griefed in 2018. Since then, he has only played sporadically to check up on his last group base, which is surprisingly still ungriefed. In Killer Capybara's view, 2B2T is definitely in a different place from where he left it. He does miss the quieter times when you could recognize everyone's name on the server, and the chat moves slow enough that you could hold an actual conversation. It was a very different experience now than what it was back then, just due to the sheer interest and number of people wanting to play on the server. The queue killed any motivation among his friends group to want to play on it, ever since the removal of Veteran Queue. Despite not playing on the server so much anymore, he still keeps up with the going-ons, and still is impressed as ever with the scale of builds and how the players continue to push Minecraft to its limits. And he guarantees that if he could get in quickly without needing to pay, he would still be playing. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank Killer Capybara for the information for this video. I will leave a link to all of the screenshots he has of the bases in the description. Leave a like, and maybe even consider subscribing.
ESPN Plus is ready for football. Live, can't miss games.
Bro, this is such a W playlist.
Valley of Wheats was built by Zhang, a player who did not really like to interact with other players. Zhang was the sole builder of the entire sanctuary. He spent his entire time on 2B2T, building and expanding the valley in both of the phases from 2011 to 2012 and late 2013 to 2014. Zhang was very proud of the Valley of Wheats and enjoyed it when other players visited. To gather more players to visit his valley, Zhang built a pyramid in the Nether, which would lead players through a portal and into the Valley of Wheats. Zhang let players take food from the valley, but never allowed them to build in it. During a trip through the Nether, Zhang was attacked by another player, but was saved by Optopia, who was one of the only players Zhang ever interacted with. Optopia was saved by Optopia, who was one of the only players Zhang ever interacted with. Optopia would give Zhang gifts, and would protect the Valley of Wheats at all costs, killing anyone who did not replant wheat. Other known players that were invited to the Valley of Wheats were XCC2, Passio5, ZXCWBZ1, and others. XCC2 was introduced to the Valley of Wheats by Optopia as they were heading to one of his stashes to resupply. They were traveling along the Nether Highway, and Optopia detoured into a portal. This is where XCC2 saw the ruins of the valley for the first time. In his eyes, it was truly amazing. There were massive pyramids and sphinxes covered in cobblestone lava casts, with fields of ruined wheat as far as the eye could see. This was sometime in 2013, and the owner of the Valley of Wheat, Zhang, had been a near constant presence on the server, which only had about 30 to 40 active players at any given time. Zhang rarely spoke in chats, but was almost always online, building his beloved valley. Zhang's philosophy of, in quotes, free bread and visitors are always welcome would be made with signs posted above and below the valley. Zhang even constructed a pyramid in the nether, perfectly matching the valley's central pyramid, welcoming visitors to come overworld and be his guest. By the time XCC2 visited the valley, Zhang had disappeared. He had not been seen in nearly a year. XCC2 and a few of his friends, Passio5, ZXCWBZ1, and others met at the Valley of Wheat and began removing some of the many lava casts which covered the pyramids. After the cobblestone was gone, there was significant repair and rebuild work performed to restore the existing pyramids. At that time, the valley was comprised of only the central pyramid, the northern pyramid named the Pyramid of Cows, and the eastern and southern pyramids. Several sphinx platforms could be seen, where Zhang had been in the process of building and never finished. Ultimately, the structures were repaired and wheat replanting could begin. This was a very tedious process, and after some discovery regarding the use of Fortune 3 pickaxes for wheat harvesting, the fields began to come back to life. Some new fields were planted and expanded, and even the Valley of Potatoes, Zhang's mini potato valley within the Valley of Wheat, was fully restored. It was around this time that an amazing event occurred. One day, while XCC2 was replanting wheat with Passy, who should return to the valley? None other than Zhang himself. Not seen on the server in nearly a year, Zhang was amazed at what they had done to restore the valley, and was incredibly grateful that they were preserving this iconic landmark. Over the course of the next year, Zhang laid the foundation for additional pyramids and sphinxes. He dug more tunnels and expanded the valley to include the Western Pyramid, which was named the Pyramid of Mules, the South and Western Pyramid, or known as the Pyramid of Souls, and its underground sea gates, netherworld farms, and the Southeastern Pyramid, which was also known as the Pyramid of Bones. Over time, they had plenty of visitors to the valley, who all contributed in various ways. Spid King created the skeleton grinder that gave Pyramid of Bones its name. Someone brought a donkey that he used to fill quarrels under the Pyramid of Mules. Rogue Ghost helped replant and was a staunch defender of the valley. HNS completed the tunnel to spawn, and Kainsloft visited and built smelting and storage devices for them. This was considered the heights of the valley's existence. The fields were in perfect order, always being expanded to encompass Zhang's vision of fields from sea to sea. All of the pyramids were pristine, and there wasn't a single spot in the fields that lacked mature wheat plants. XCC2 stayed at the valley and kept the wheat in perfect order. Eventually, like all well-known places on Tubi Tuti, the valley's days were numbered. There were lava casts, withers, and TNT griefing done by various players, some by Tubi Tuti griefers like IMBJR, who believed it was his personal duty to destroy every build he found on the server, and his compatriot at the time, Talo112. Other efforts to destroy the valley were by random players that sought fame for destroying a landmark and then eventually disappearing from the server forever. After a significant griefing event, Zhang would leave the server, sometimes for months at a time. Over days or weeks, the valley structures would be repaired and replanted. Zhang's visits on Tubi Tuti would become fewer and fewer, and XCC2's interest in being the sole caretaker of the Valley of Wheat began to wane. Conclusively, XCC2's time there ended, and he abandoned it in early 2016 after repairing all of its magnificent pyramids, sphinxes, and obelisks one final time. Since he left, the Valley of Wheat was destroyed by the Russia invasion. It's said that over 80% of the Valley of Wheat was griefed by Russians. The valley is preserved in world downloads, renders, and even reconstructed on Tubi Tuti in different locations around the map by players. The Valley of Wheat was a home to many old players, and is still remembered till this day. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank XCC2 for the information for this video. I'll leave a link to the Reddit post about his Valley of Wheat in the description. Leave a like, and maybe consider subscribing for more videos like this in the future. Anyway guys, stay fast, and see you guys next time. This tale begins at the dawn of Tubi Tuti and XCC2's first days of entry on the server. XCC2 happened to join the server during one of the busiest times, and spawn was filled with dozens of people punching each other to death with their fists. At that time, new players spawned at 0-0, and there was an obsidian area on the ground, approximately 15 by 15 blocks square. It was impossible to place any blocks on the slab or build on top of it. It was usually surrounded by a curtain of lava, water, and cobblestone that had to be navigated to escape. After XCC2 was adventuring for a few weeks and stayed in various ruined structures, he stumbled upon a partially destroyed castle, which he believed to be abandoned. There were no people around, and it was, at that time, reasonably far from spawn. It was located at the coordinates -400, 800. The castle is made up of 4 towers, connected by walls with a central courtyard. One of the towers was built almost to sky heights, which was 128 at the time, and had a room on top of it. In the courtyard, XCC2 found some small buildings against the inside wall, with signs named for inhabiting them. One of the names that he remembered was Pimp Master Flex. XCC2 doesn't know if he was the original builder of this castle, but he was part of the group of Face Punch users that made up most of the dedicated player base of 2B2T at that time. XCC2 decided that he would repair the castle and make it his home. It was all built out of cobblestone, so it was easy to fix. After a few days there, he began to notice that other parts of the castle were being repaired, and someone had even created a house nearby. Eventually, XCC2 would meet Alex0208, and they agreed to continue building and expanding the area around the castle. XCC2 built the base's iconic aqueduct, and shortly after, he constructed the drum tower and arched twin towers. The top of the towers were made of red wool that was produced by dyeing white wool blocks with roses. Roses were obtained by flying around the surrounding areas and collecting all the red flowers XCC2 could find. To produce that much red wool was a massive challenge at the time, since sheep could not be bred or dyed in this version of Minecraft. By now, several months had passed, and more people began to become aware of this base. XCC2 offered food and shelter to new players joining the server who were trying to get a start. He also kept trees around the castle, asking only that players would plant when they harvested wood. At that time, the only trees in the game was oak. Many friendly players showed up, and some offered to stay around and build things. Others showed up during times that XCC2 wasn't there, and this is where he experienced his first taste of griefing on 2B2T. The griefing took many forms, some much creative than others. One player offered to stay and build at the base, but instead created the first lava cast XCC2 had ever seen, right in front of the castle. The player thought it was funny, so XCC2 waited until he logged out on top of the cast, and he quickly took it down. When the player next logged in, he fell from his logout position and fell to his death right in front of XCC2. XCC2 took his gear and used some cobblestone from the lava cast to construct the gatehouse on the front of the castle. One group of griefers was known as the Dark Carnival. After griefing, they would always leave a sign with their name on it and the words honk honk honk. XCC2 doesn't know who any of the individual members were. The only thing he saw was their handiwork. They were gentle griefers, usually producing something obscene and taking some items from chests. One of their projects was to create a large pink wool phallus in the castle's top tower room with white wool cream running down the side of the tower. Somewhere around this time, while flying was allowed on the server, some players showed up and they had a battle in the skies over the base. This was XCC2's first meeting of Cold_Storage77 and X0XP. Eventually, he would become friends with both of them. X0XP gave the base its name, NFE, named for the coordinates that it occupied, -400, 800. Griefing at NFE became somewhat of a sport, and there were various methods and levels of destruction over the years. For example, filling the courtyard with water, removing all of the torches at the base, covering the tower with lava or water, blasting parts with TNT, chipping down a tower, and burning buildings and trees. The worst of the griefers was a group from Finland that called themselves Pillandia. The members were Fenster, Parjin, Vakura, and their leader, Arthur McGuire. These players made it their mission to completely destroy the entire place, and they succeeded. One day, XCC2 logged out in the castle, as usual, but when he logged back in later, he was met with utter destruction. There was not a single stone block left of the castle, and all that remained was a giant hole. The team from Finland had brought 4 inventories of TNT and decimated the place. XCC2 didn't know at the time how they obtained so much TNT. There were no available dupe methods, and in fact nobody had ever considered the possibility to dupe anything. At this point, it was too much for XCC2's friend Alex0208. and he left Tubi Tutti. XCC2 saw him log on 1 or 2 times over the years, but they never based together again, and XCC2 thinks he never played on the server much after that. With nothing left for XCC2 at NFE, he eventually left and went to a new base with someone he had met named Passy05. They would go on to build together at Squid Base, Plugin Town, Ziggy Base, and several other famous places together. Over the months, XCC2 would eventually return to NFE when one of the other bases he was at fell. The various friends of NFE that he met over the years would usually assist him. These players were Aaron, Fisky, Police Mike 55, JDW9966, X0XP, Ziggy_S, Spit Kane, Leon Norius, Live Lion, Cytotoxic T-Cell, and many others. Some players even showed up when XCC2 wasn't there, and performed their own rebuilds or repairs, and contributed by building their own buildings. Tubin built his church, Z_S made the farms below NFE, Dr. Heavy created his Obsidian Egg Tower, Sato86 built the Valkyrian Embassy, and a player from the Broville server even made a house. XCC2 would spend months there, guarding and repairing the base after each grief, usually none as bad as the one performed by the Pyland team. These guys would be gone from Tubi Tutti for months, and then show up randomly just to TNT the base. They did this 3 different times, until one day, when XCC2 was talking to Police Mike 55, that they must be grinding gunpowder somewhere nearby, since XCC2 saw them online a lot. Police Mike 55 told XCC2 that he thought he found a grinder a few thousand blocks away, and he went looking for it. On that day, Police Mike 55 found the grinder, and the guys from Pyland AFKing while the grinder collected gunpowder. XCC2 met Police Mike 55 there, and they killed them all and TNT'd their grinder, stopping them from their final grief of NFE. Other notorious griefers over the years, Heartblacks and Yu Ziffy, were 2 players that would constantly harass XCC2 at NFE. During one exchange, while NFE was in its ice phase, Heartblacks and Pop-Bob had an epic battle on the ice with speed hacks right in front of the Twin Arch Towers. As Heartblacks and Pop-Bob ran off into the distance and battled, XCC2 stayed and fought Yusifi. XCC2 remembers him running away back towards spawn after his armor broke, and XCC2 launched a single arrow at him from about 50 blocks away. The long arch of the arrow found its mark as he ran, and Yusifi died on the ice. Pop-Bob would waver between being friendly with NFE and its enemy. One day, XCC2 logged in and found Pop-Bob at NFE on one of his alternate accounts, creating a huge lava cast over the castle. For months, Pop-Bob claimed that it was not him doing it, but someone else with access to the alt. With new versions of Minecraft came strange new problems to the map. These included different terrain generation, the rising of the oceans, and sometimes NFE was in a tundra biome and the oceans were frozen. NFE was home to Tubi Tutti's first operating end portal, which XCC2 constructed out of endframe blocks produced during the first backdoor hack on the server. Police Mike 55 and some others had tried to create a portal weeks earlier, but they were unaware of the correct Eye of Ender orientation. With Police Mike 55 present, XCC2 lit the end portal in a special room he constructed under NFE to look exactly like a real stronghold end portal room. Police Mike 55 and XCC2 were the first to enter the end and generate the original "the end" map on Tubi Tutti. Later that day, JDW9966 and XCC2 slayed Tubi Tutti's first Ender Dragon. Ultimately, many more portals were created on the server with hacked endframes, and House became aware of this. He removed all the portals he could find, and even removed all the endstone blocks brought back to the overworld by using World Guard. The current end map is the second one to be created after Housemaster built his own end portals and allowed access officially. Conclusively, XCC2 grew tired of doing repairs, and the griefing got too intense. With the new world height of 256, the lava cast grew too large. Dozens of withers were released under NFE, and the entire underground, which had crops, animals, horses, and rooms, dating back to 2012, were completely carved away. He lost interest in repairing NFE and completely abandoned it after its griefing. The base fell for a final time in January 2014. Today, the devastation from spawn stretches all to NFE and beyond. XCC2 sometimes roams its grounds and will hand out supplies and gear to new travelers who find their way there. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank XCC2 for the information for this video. I'll leave a link to his original Reddit post about NFV in the description. Leave a like, and maybe consider subscribing for more information like this in the future. Anyway guys, stay fast, and see you guys next time. The Wrath Outpost, or also known as the Spawn Incursion Base, is a well-known monument near Spawn. It was created during the third incursion by the group Valkyria. The most notable players were Sato86, Pyrobytes, The_Fox, Thieves and Sound, FitMC, Exodus, Shorelock, Henry, Bammerbeast, Kane's Law, Dorkumada, and many others. The third incursion was originally planned around the 7 sins. Each base they would make would be named after one, so if the first base failed, which was Wrath, the next one will receive a new name base around the sin. However, Wrath never fell. They were prepared for that case, but it never happened, and the other 6 Obsidian bases never had to be built. Wrath Outpost served as both a base, and it was the objective of the incursion itself. Building it was also a big challenge. Back then, players did not have as many resources as the current 2B2T economy, so building the outpost would be a huge feat. 2B2T at the time was also going through 2 years without a single dupe exploit. A lot of duped items the Valkyries had was coming from 2013 dupe stashes that were starting to run dry. That, plus the logistics involved with transporting the resources, proved to be an annoyance. Sato86 personally had to use his alternate account to carry an inventory of ender chests full of enchanted golden apples for the rest of the group. Thankfully, he had some help. Pyrobytes had access to the ender chest inf, which allowed them to dupe ender chests at Wrath, and Dorkumada sped up their construction with his MC build program after he built the Melon Castle next to it. This reduced the travels they made to bring obsidian and other materials to spawn greatly. However, construction would sometimes stop when Pyrobyte was not online, and the group ran out of ender chests. The design of Wrath Outpost wasn't planned. It was a mix of multiple player ideas. Players in the group named Dorkumada, Bammerbeast, and Pyrobytes were the ones doing the external design. The dome on top of Wrath was originally just flat grass, which was taken down to create the final obsidian dome. The dome was the last addition, and the 4 giant eagles were built by Sato. The spawn beacon in the middle was also built by Sato, and Pyrobytes would eventually place 1 block of bedrock in the middle of the spawn beacon. The architecture inside Wrath Outpost was mainly built by Sato. There was a series of long obsidian halls that stretched to each cardinal direction, starting from the center. However, it still seemed empty, so Sato constructed more hallways that connected to the cardinal hallways. These additional halls stood by the square walls of Wrath, forming 4 little plazas inside Wrath Outpost. Everything seemed to be going well, until their plans were somewhat interrupted. They had players like Jared2013, Talo112, Popbob, and others trying to attack them by interrupting or sabotaging the construction. On top of that, they had to deal with lava casts as well. Jared himself spent most of his armor sets trying to stop them from building Wrath, to the point that he had to start conserving his armor sets and repairing them at a place that would later become known as the Penny Dropper. The Penny Dropper was made by Jared2013 and Talo112 to combat the third incursion. The original name for it was Gold Farm and was only called the Penny Dropper after the incursion. It was 1,000 blocks south to Wrath Outpost. It's where they enchanted their items and had a gigantic gold farm which acted as a rebuff spot to repair armor when attacking each time. They lava casted over the Penny Dropper to make it safe and would be difficult to grief. Jared and Baloney Pony left it be as it was too powerful, flooding the farm with amounts of gold. The whole area later served as a spot where Jack the Ripper killed Jared2013 and took the original Tizona. Another conflict that happened was when Sato called an end to the third incursion and said they were pulling out of spawn. A player who was guarding Wrath at the time, Henry, logged onto the server and was leaving Wrath Outpost until he saw who he presumed to be Tristan using another account named Techno Scootaloo. Tristan began to attack Henry, and Henry tried to run away since he didn't want to fight, as Tristan had the clients and gear advantage. Eventually, Jared2013 and Popbob showed up soon after and had Henry cornered between the 3 of them. There was definitely no way Henry could take all 3 of them, since all 3 were using Ender Pearls to catch up to him. This is where Henry would die. This incident was shocking because even though Henry knew Tristan was friends with Popov and Jared, he was also an incursion member. At the time, Tristan denied being on the account, but there wasn't really a good explanation. This would give the opportunity to Jared, Popov, and Tristan to create a lava cast inside of Wrath Outpost. Henry would tell Sato about this incident, which would make Sato, Jack the Ripper, and FitMC, which was on his alternate account named Ness, and got together to travel to Spawn. They decided that they were not going to fight them one-on-one. Instead, they would meet up at one spot in the Nether, since they were all in different locations around the map. When they eventually met in the Nether, they waited outside the Nether portal to Wrath. As soon as he went into the portal and into the overworld, Popov, Tristan, and Jared 2013 were there. Sato, Fit, and Jack would attack them, and eventually, Jared and Popov ran away. But Tristan wasn't attacked, since he was not an enemy with Valkyria at the time. When the fight was over, the inside of Wrath was covered in a massive lava cast. Pyrobite would eventually come and use infinite TNT to obliterate all of the lava cast. Henry's death motivated the group to come back to Spawn and protect Wrath for the last 3 to 4 days of the month. Even with all of this conflict, Wrath Outpost was still managed to be constructed entirely. Sato can't accurately state how long it took exactly, but they finished it before the deadline and had a few days of nothing to do, other than protecting Wrath. According to Sato, Wrath was never griefed. There were attempts of griefing Wrath, but they quickly would put it back to shape. Withers were disabled back then, due to the same sound exploits that Thunder had, so unless players were dedicated to mine the place block by block, Wrath would be fine. Wrath was griefed several times by several players after the incursion was over, but none of that mattered anymore, since their goal was done. A year later, the Fourth Reich removed the bedrock block at the center of Wrath by using the piston exploits. Over months and years, Wrath Outpost would be blown up and lava casted by various players. In 2018, a player named Armorsmith lava casted the original Wrath Outpost, and then some of his followers mined the blocks to construct a new Wrath Outpost. This Wrath was special because it marked the beginning of the infamous Old Spawn Road. Players such as iHack Walmarts, Rusherfag, Metrez, Vietnam, and many new players contributed to this Wrath Outpost. Wrath Outpost would also get replicated by players across the map. On August 29th, 2019, Wrath Village was established when the players Nambros and Jacko Lover rebuilt Wrath Outpost at the coordinates X3000, Z500. With the help of 4 other players, which were Cactus Duper, Dude Trash, CB_Gator, and Vexer232. It was built in the course of 9 hours after they used 9 shulkers of ender chests. When construction was over, other players were invited to come and build at the newly named Wrath Village, including a mod farm, placement of an indestructible end crystal, map art museum, a Valley of Wheat recreation, and an obsidian dinosaur skull. And instead of a piece of bedrock in the middle, like in the original Wrath Outpost, they used a sponge block instead. Eventually, the Wrath Village occupied 31 players. On September 3rd, 2019, an unknown player sent the coordinates of Wrath Village to another player who was named Enderpearl. He was live streaming at the time, and the viewer of his live stream leaked the coordinates to the public, leading to half a dozen unknown players coming to Wrath within the hour. The group, knowing that it was most likely the downfall of Wrath Village, they decided to defend the base as best as they could, killing all random players who showed up. When they were no longer able to, they griefed all non-obsidian builds themselves, so no other players could be able to do so, officially abandoning the project. On January 1st, 2020, a player named Speed Demon Zero decided to repair the original Wrath Outpost. There were a couple of reasons why Speed Demon wanted to repair Wrath Outpost. One reason was that he thought that not many players actually knew the history behind the original Wrath Outpost, and some players didn't even know what it was. When random players would come by, he would give them the story why it was built, and the purpose behind it. He also wanted players to stumble upon Wrath Outpost and see it in person for their first time. Some players haven't seen Wrath Outpost in its current status for years. The other reason why he rebuilt it, because he was getting tired of players creating Wrath copies instead of rebuilding the original, such as the second Wrath in the opposite axis of the original Wrath in Wrath Village. Many players contributed to this Wrath Outpost. Speed Demon Zero was originally repairing it alone, until one of his
Duncan is very advanced. Science, algebra, formulas. There's a lot that goes into this. You can't just come up with a name.
Ice Spice Munchkin's drink.
What would that be?
You put the Munchkin in the Dunkin'.
I think I got replaced.
Plugin Town was created right after Luke to the Bun griefed Squidbase. On December 31st, 2011, XCC2, Passio 5, Pop-Up, and Police Mike 55 burned the docks, blew up the giant grinders, and left on that day. Within a week, they had founded Plugin Town, but it wasn't called that though. It had no name. It started as a central tower to hold their chest, and they had an underground room with rows of beds. There was a bed for each player in the group. Back then, you could /kill the spawn if your bed was destroyed. If someone put your bed back in the same spot, you could /kill again and reappear in your bed. They had a system where they would flip a switch and it showed that a bed needed to be replaced. So if someone at the base would put your bed back, it meant you had gone to spawn. Eventually, Plugin Town would occupy the players, XCC2, Police Mike 55, Pop-Up, Passio 05, iClover, Assassin Raptor, X0XP, Polly the Parrot, and Cream of the Slop. The group started by building stuff, like at any other base. They had a blaze grinder in the nether, and blazes were somewhat new back then. Passio 5 built his giants, in quotes, dwarf tunnels under the base. Pop-Up and XCC2 were working on this giant glass dome before the plugin was active. Pop-Up would eventually give up on construction since he couldn't get the ends to line up, and got mad. Pop-Up would build this tower once he gave up on his glass dome. X0XP made his house with a 0 on the roof. There was a house built into the hillside, most likely Polly the Parrots or iClover. Assassin Raptor built his house. Police Mike 55 made his Castle of Diamond, and XCC2 began building his biggest interpreted build yet, Fontainebleau Palace. It was while XCC2 was building this, was made aware of Pop-Up's plugin, which was installed by Housemaster in order to correct a problem where players would get stuck on the nether roof. I'll leave a link to a past video for more information about this. In the plugin, you can see the ROT13 encoded names of the players who had access to it, which were the players Pop-Up, Police Mike 55, Passio 05, XCC2, Assassin Raptor, X0XP, XX Predator, XX86, Wets Player 123, Polly the Parrots, and Cream of the Slop. Once XCC2 had infinite materials, his build went faster. But one day, when XCC2 logged in, he came to find Assassin Raptor had built a Viking mead next to his building, and it was in the way. XCC2 basically stopped building at this point. The group started using the plugin backdoor more by flying at spawn, throwing gas eggs, and harassing Housemaster. House would eventually teleport to Plugin Town and watch the group flying around and spawning in items. This went on for a few days or weeks. Ultimately, Pop-Up ruined it for everyone. He was trapped while using the /locate feature of his plugin and teleported to various coordinates to raid and grief player bases. Housemaster was working with some players who had suspected Pop-Up of having this ability, and Housemaster was present when Pop-Up teleported to a bait location. Once he was caught, Housemaster found out what was allowing the access and removed the plugin. The group would basically abandon the base at that point. The base lasted 4 to 6 months after it was founded and was eventually griefed by multiple players throughout the years. A few years later, Cold Wave and some other players went to Plugin Town and restored parts of it to use it as a base. The original group had left a lot of materials there that were not destroyed when they left because the group didn't care to move any of them, since they all built giant stashes while they had the plugin. Today, Plugin Town is blown up from multiple players throughout the years, but players would still venture in the ruins and even leave signs at the base to show that this piece of history is still remembered till this day. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank XCC2 for the information for this video. Leave a like and maybe consider subscribing for more information like this in the future. Anyway guys, stay fast and see you guys next time. The Lonely Island was a base created in 2011 by Momo the Bear and Benny Dees. Momo wanted to make a base really far away that they would never be griefed. When they were finally able to leave spawn, they were sneaking and trying not to be seen by anyone. However, one player named Audiotone found Momo and Benny and wouldn't leave them alone. Audiotone didn't attack them and would talk a bit. At the time, Audiotone was living in California and told them about how he only listens to this one punk band all the time, though Benny Dees can't remember the name. He finally convinced Momo and Benny to let him join, so they started off traveling. Their goal was to get to 100,000 blocks from spawn to be safe. They ended up traveling in the nether to decrease the travel time, but for them, it still took forever. After reaching 100,000 blocks, they calculated that they were far enough and went back to the overworld. They ended up in a cave, deep underground, in the middle of an ocean. They decided to swim up and almost drowned. With all three players swimming on the surface in the middle of the ocean, they decided to swim in opposite directions, and the first person to find land would let the others know. Eventually, they ended up finding an island. Since it was in the middle of nowhere, they decided on the name, The Lonely Island. The pixel arts was created by Momo the Bear sometime later, and it was a popular meme at the time. After building for a while, Benny D's girlfriend, now fiance, Anna, joined, and Benny traveled all the way back to spawn to get her. Also, Momo and Benny's best friend, The_Breeze, joined around the same time, and they had to travel back again. They continued to build, just the 5 players in the group. They created games at the island, like Rock'em Sock'em Robots, Checkers, Connect 4, a dice machine built for their Risk board, and their own game called Splife. 2 teams would play, and you would press the button so the wool block would come out. You could run around if you didn't have the button, but once you picked it up, you weren't allowed to move. You had to stand still and pass it to your teammates, then you could move again. The goal was to get to the pressure plates, and then musical blocks under the pitch would go off, signaling the goal. They had redstone torches to keep score. They had an underground tunnel system where it would transport you to various locations around the island. They had an XP grinder, mining expedition safe house, the Lonely Island Old Town, the Fu Manju, Audiotone's Grand Estate, a lighthouse, Breeze Modern Abode, a slime cave, a PvP arena, the dock, which had a boat by Benny Dees. They also made a city hall. It had wool on the ground, and when they made a decision, those in favor would stand in one color, those opposed on the other, and there was a neutral section in the middle. They had a bunch of laws to keep things interesting, and even built a jail just to mess around. After most things were built, they would mostly just log on the server and talk, and play games. Momo, Breeze, and Benny all moved away from the same small town for university, so it was a way to stay in contact. The group slowly stopped playing and lost contact with Audiotone, and couldn't find a way to reach him since they didn't have any contact information or even know his full name. The group would log on occasionally, years after, all separately, since they were curious. Benny posted a sign, same with Audiotone, and Momo after he had surgery. Without going into detail, their best friend Breeze passed away on June 7th, 2012, so Benny made a memorial. After the group left the server, the Lonely Island would get visitors throughout the years. The first highlighted player was Jack the Ripper. He and his friend named Monoxide found the Lonely Island in August of 2016, right before Elytras were disabled. Another person who found Lonely Island was Cavias. The island was very close to his own base that was a few thousand blocks away. There was no damage to Lonely Island when he got there, nor did he place anything there either. He would visit for a couple of days, and even gave another YouTuber called Mines a tour of the island. After he realized that Jared 2013 had coordinates to Lonely Island, he decided to blow it up before any other griefers would. Today, the Lonely Island is still recognizable, and players would leave signs at the island till this day. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank Benny Dees, Jack the Ripper, and Cavias for the information for this video. Leave a like, and maybe consider subscribing for more information like this in the future. Anyway guys, stay fast, and see you guys next time. The End Water Cube. Having years of history revolving around it, it recently had a massive project which was constructed by a group of players and has changed the End spawn entirely. Today in this video, we will be discussing the history of the End Water Cube, having over 150,000 ice blocks placed to create this water cube. Here's how it started. The idea of this water cube came from the players called G-Smack and Scholar G. The overworld water cube that they made was staying for a while, and people started to drain it. This didn't make them mad, since they were mainly eager for their new project. It made a great distraction for the end water cube's construction. This would make them form a plan, which was to fight players who were destroying the overworld water cube, chunk ban players in the overworld, and distract players so that no one would know their next plan of action would be. They would go into the end to start creating the end water cube after having the distraction needed to have everyone off their tails. This started on December 8th of 2019. They would flatten out the platform of the end using the bedrock floor to help assist them in the process. On the first day of construction, they had the cube up to Y level 48. Scholar G had the idea to carve his name into the bedrock floor via bedrock breaking methods and put his full in-game name there. This led G-Smack to do the same, and other group members named Gujan to do the same, and House 1 as well. They had no one stopping them from making the water cube, as they had no trouble doing anything. They also had donkeys in the end, which allowed them to dupe ice and wither kits to help remove obsidian. They would do this at an island called Island Stash, or Ice Stash, because it was on an end island, carved out, and had doves of ice blocks, TNT, and wither kits. While they were chunk banning the end, so no one could hurt them, the group realized they could use an exploit which would place unbreakable end crystals at the end platforms, and disable the end platform from spawning in. The crystal bug to Inquart's Fall Trap, the end, was discovered on technical Minecraft servers, but it was G-Smack's idea to use on 2B2T. Housemaster actually intervened when the group made the Fall Trap. He restarted the server and deleted the indestructible end crystals that were used to create the Void Hole. Here's a conversation with G-Smack to Housemaster explaining the exploit. G-Smack says, "First off, what do you think of the water cube at the N00? Just curious. Second, is it against server rules to use the indestructible end crystals to make the end platform a void trap? I made one and it got removed without reason. It is possible to fly out of it, so it's not like we're closing the end. Please let me know. Thanks." Housemaster then replies back, "I haven't seen it yet, but it is probably cool and adds to the already chaotic end spawn. The crystal thing seems like a bug and will probably get fixed if it keeps happening, as it did appear to be trapping / killing players in an unexpected and unfair way from a game bug / exploit." The group would still do this, and Scholar G broke a 5x5 bedrock hole underneath the platform, so if anyone entered the end without an elytra, they would die. Eventually, Housemaster patches the exploit from the server. On December 10th, 2019, the group had the water cube up to Y level 79, just 2 days after having it up to Y level 48. On December 13th, 2019, they had the water cube up to Y level 109, which was insane considering how much water and placement it truly took. On December 14th, they had it at Y level 150, and lastly on December 15th of 2019, they finished the water cube by adding 106 layers of water in 1 day. The group truly had no one stopping them, and no one knew about the construction because they were too focused on the overworld water cube. G-Smack, Scholar G, 4 pilots, Gujan_, and House 1 did something that would make the end completely different. They also had players like Jack the Ripper, Dunix, and Zero Nubilis 122201 as moral supports and backed the idea of the creation and loved the idea. In the course of 1 week, the group cleared Armorsmith's massive lava cast, the huge 300 by 300 circle of end spawn, all random floating blocks in the end, made a massive platform for the water to spread, and placed over 150,000 ice blocks to get it done. They also found a really weird exploit while refighting the dragon while the end was completely encased in water. The end pillars would make water pockets, showing that they had some sort of odd property while in the respawn phase, and killing the dragon for the first time in the water cube spawned a dragon egg after killing it that the group still has in possession. Around this time, a player named the Troll 2001 found a new exploit using the end portals to dupe items. It works by making a donkey with a chest filled with shulkers go down to half a heart, then pushing it into an active end portal. This will make it die from fall damage. As it enters the end, the donkey will die twice, which will double your items. However, the water cube makes this difficult, but this exploit currently still works on 2B2T. The end water cube still stands on 2B2T till this day. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank Scholar G, Gujan, G-Smack, and the Troll 2001 for the information for this video. Leave a like, and maybe consider subscribing for more information like this in the future. Anyway guys, stay fast, and see you guys next time. The Old Spawn Road, or originally known as the West Road, is an extremely old 2B2T route. It's very different from every road on the server, as this route does not go straight. It was constructed with twists and turns, which is very different from the straight roads that you see around spawn and in the nether. Today in this video, we will discuss why this path was built, and where it stands today. The road was constructed in 2013 by Legit Yarrick. Legit Yarrick played on the server mostly without coordinates because he felt that it would ruin the immersion. He needed a way back to his house, so he built the Old Spawn Road so the use of coordinates would no longer be a factor in his travels from spawn to his base. Although there was no conflict during construction, the server was very laggy at the time, and almost no players were online. Legit Yarrick would also build Castle Hayheart, which was initially called Bijette. It was built near the road, and he wanted it to be an inn near spawn for travelers. It was relatively close to spawn, because his idea of the game is not going millions of blocks away with speed hacks to spawn, because his idea of the game is not going millions of blocks away with speed hacks to build a safe base. He wanted it to be used by players who did not use hacks at all. It was used as a potential starting point to resist the hackers, which Legit Yarrick greatly despised. The fact that cheats are allowed on 2B2T, he argues, does not make them any more acceptable. He wanted it to be a safe spot for honorable players and not fortune players, which at the time were a vast majority of the player base. When months and years went by, players would help by building nearby bases. A group was formed to organize the repairs of the road, and it was believed to be named the Fellowship of the Road, but Legit Yarrick cannot confirm that this is their real name. In the beginning of 2018, a player named Armorsmith blew up the Old Spawn Road. He would later go on to create a large obsidian structure, similar to the Wrath Outpost at the beginning of the road. This obsidian structure was built at the exact start of the Old Spawn Road, and was called the Wrath of Armorsmith, which was at the coordinates x-3500 Z300. It was made in a double chunk, which was also the first example of chunk corruption on the server. Now, some of you might ask, how was this replica of Wrath Outpost destroyed? Well, back during the 6th incursion, Armorsmith founded the first movement to go against an incursion. He and another player named iHack Walmart killed players who were members of the incursion at spawn. They decided to grief their obsidian wall for the first time. It triggered a battle at the northern wall. The famous YouTuber, FitMC, would eventually combat log after the battle, while some incursion members kept fighting at the wall. Later on, they would destroy the Wrath of Armorsmith. Today, the Old Spawn Road is mostly destroyed, but players were reconstructed throughout the years. I personally traveled on the road with Armorsmith, who was the one who blew it up. While traveling on the road, we started at the Wrath of Armorsmith. It was mostly blown up, but the remnants of obsidian are still visible. Along the way, we would see blown up bases and castles that had lasted years on the server. We even found Castle Hayheart, which was surprisingly still intact. There were a lot of blown up parts, but it was still recognizable. The road would also get detours, which were created due to Withers being ahead on the main road. Along the way, we even found a 2014 base named Human Ford. Players would leave signs at this base throughout the years, even dating back to 2014. This is incredible, since most signs that are this close to spawn are destroyed. When we got close to the end of the road, we approached the now ruined terminal base. A few months ago, Bestkong NA, who is a friend of Armorsmith, connected the Old Spawn Road to the area. This location marked the end of the 7-year-old road. The main cathedral stood on the server before the terminal base was built by the player Medicated_. He repaired the cathedral and added structures. It stood on the Old Spawn Road for a while, until a decision was made by a friend of Armorsmith's to destroy the base. And so the base was doomed, but a world download was taken before the base was destroyed. Imagine stumbling at this base as a new player with no equipment or food, after walking down the Old Spawn Road for tens of thousands of blocks without knowing what can be found at the end. That would be quite a reward, and definitely an unforgettable experience. Thanks for watching. I would like to thank Legit Yarrick and Armorsmith for the information for this video. Leave a like, and maybe consider subscribing for more information like this in the future. Anyway guys, stay fast, and see you guys next time. Shenandoah was a very old base on 2B2T. Many old, mid, and new players most likely heard about this base, though most likely never heard of the story that took place there. Today in this video, I'll be telling the story of Shenandoah from the perspective of the players Henry and Exodus, who were both members at the base. Exodus arrived in Shenandoah by a freak accident and sheer kindness from others. 2B2T was the very first server he played on, and he had never played Minecraft before, thus he knew nothing of the game itself, or any of its mechanics. He spent over a week at spawn, unable to escape, or learn the game from within. He would ask players in chats for help, until eventually, someone took pity upon Exodus and decided to help him escape spawn. That player was E2the-G, or also commonly known as Ito, and the place he took Exodus was to Shenandoah. E2the-G would commonly roam around spawn, posting in chats for new players to come to his coordinates for free food and potions. This is where Henry would eventually find Ito, and took Henry to his spawn base around 2,000 blocks away from spawn in the overworld, which was a multi-floored underground complex within a snow-covered mountain in the ice plains. Before leaving, he told Henry that there was only one rule he needed to remember, and that was to never trust anyone on 2B2T. As Ito sent that message, he immediately killed Henry. When Henry respawned, Ito sent him another message, stating that if he could make it back there and get himself set up, he might consider inviting Henry to his base. So what would Henry do? He would try to make his way back, and right as his food bar was getting low, he found the loot of a freshly dead player who had iron armor and food. From there, Henry continued to the spawn base and stayed there for a few days, grinding for better gear. He contacted Ito, and he sent Henry nether coordinates to head to, which was to Shenandoah. The tunnels to Shenandoah were quite convoluted, but Henry made it without too much trouble, and set up a room as the primary part of the base, which at that time was a multi-floor underground stone hallway with numerous rooms, almost like a motel, and a castle, which was constructed by a player named Jesse_number 6. In 2013, when Henry and Exodus had just arrived, Shenandoah was little more than a few underground halls for the members to sleep in. They had a simple meat grinder composed of one skeleton and one zombie mob spawner. Their primary diet was watermelon and rotting flesh. To make things even worse, Shenandoah was also in bugged land, where animals would not spawn. This meant that the first animals had to be manually transported from thousands of blocks away, and usually via nether portals. Henry and Exodus both did that within the first few weeks they had arrived, contributing the first farm to the base. Another member in the group named Pace would build a tower during this time. Jesse was never able to play much, and left the castle as merely a facade. Eventually, Exodus left the server for a long time, leaving Henry to tend to the base by himself. Things would get boring at Shenandoah for a while, so Henry went to spawn with Ito to the base known as NFE. There he met Pyrobyte, Jerry2013, Cyril2000, or also known as Josh Greep, and a few other players. Unknown to them all, this would be the last day that NFE would remain intact, as the next day, it was withered and griefed by Pop-Bob. Henry brought Cyril2000 back to Shenandoah, and they began to expand the base, and completed Jesse's castle. Cyril2000 would also bring his friend Germkilla to the base to help. Henry brought animals to the base, including horses and donkeys. Shenandoah began to rapidly expand as new members were invited to the base, and new builds were being created. However, Exodus disappeared once again, along with Germkilla. E2the-G invited Henry and Cyril2000 to Ito base, leaving Shenandoah uninhabited once again. One day, Exodus and Germkilla returned and got in contact with Henry, inviting him back to Shenandoah. Shenandoah had two generations of members. The first generation made up its founders and those that arrived in 2013. It consisted of the players Jesse_number 6 and his girlfriend at the time, Mrs. Pink. From there, Jesse invited his friend named Pace and other friends like E2the-G. Ito brought both Exodus and Henry to Shenandoah from spawn very shortly after, though there were many others that came and went during this time who had homes at the base. This would lead to the second generation of members, which arrived a year later, and by this time, all of the first generation was gone, except for Henry and Exodus. The second generation was comprised entirely of Legion members, of which was Exodus' girlfriend at the time, Sherlock, and his best friend Germkilla, Cyril 2000, and later on, Vegetable_Tree, ADH 2000, Jacob Big Rat, who was the very last to arrive. Henry and Exodus looked over the base and its members by this time, and Jesse_6 was barely ever seen. The second generation was responsible for the building of the city and the formation of the Legion of Shenandoah. The Legion of Shenandoah was a group